The story begins with a young woman lying on the floor, listening to someone say that if she goes to jail in someone else's place, he will marry her. The voice seems irritated that she's still lying down and tells her to stop pretending to be dead and speak up. The woman is still a bit confused about everything happening, but it seems like she recognizes the voice. Apparently very angry, the man asks Sylvia Murray if a cat got her tongue and why she isn't saying anything. He continues asking whether she didn't hear him since he told her to go to jail in Eve's place. Sylvia now seems to be understanding where exactly she is and who this man is, as she remembers that he's her ex-husband, Charles Lawson. Another woman seems to be in the room too, telling him not to do this, because she doesn't want to ruin someone's promising life because of her. She insists she'll go to prison herself, but says she truly had no intention of running over that person with her car. Since Sylvia called her at that moment to start an argument because she was too close to Charles, that made her nervous while trying to explain. She stops speaking and places her hand on chest like she's in pain. Charles tells her that he understands, that it's not her fault, and to calm down because her heart might not take it, and not to worry because he'll take care of everything. Revealing her true colors, she simply responds, "Chuck, you are so nice to me." Sylvia, witnessing everything, realizes that Evelyn Lloyd is there too. She recalls Eve once saying that she and Chuck were going to get married, and even asking Sylvia to come back to witness their happiness. Even though Sylvia wasn't exactly thrilled, since she had recently suffered a miscarriage and her parents died because of her. And now, even her beloved Charles was about to belong to Eve. While Sylvia trembled looking at her phone, not believing what she was hearing, Eve continued, saying that her mom and dad loved Sylvia so much that when she asked for a sister to play with, they actually adopted a little girl, her. If it weren't for Sylvia, she wouldn't have everything she has now. She even admits she feels a little sorry, because in the end, Sylvia lost a kidney, and that caused her mother to die in order to save her. Still, Eve believes Sylvia will forgive her in the end. At that moment, Sylvia feels a sharp pain in her chest and faints in the subway. She hears the last words of her past life, "I'm your only family now," spoken by Eve. Back to the present, Sylvia remembers everything that happened in the past and how that really was the last thing she heard while falling ill on the subway. But how did she return to this moment now? Looking at the furniture, the walls, the decoration, she realizes she's in Charles's house, and he keeps pressuring her, wanting to know why she's not responding. Is she just so happy that she can't even speak? Because he said he really will marry her? He also questions Sylvia, asking why, as Eve's sister, she always does everything to hurt her. He claims that if Sylvia hadn't called and said hurtful things to Eve, she wouldn't have had heart pain and crashed the car into someone. How can someone be so cruel? That's why it's better for her to wake up and accept the offer. He'll keep his promise if she goes to the police and confesses that she was the one driving the car that morning. After hearing all that nonsense, Sylvia slaps Charles's hand, which was holding her chin, and tells him not to touch her. She gets up and truly can't remember what happened after she got sick. But this scene that's repeating, she knows it all too well, because she still holds it in her heart to this day. It was the moment that marked the beginning of all the tragedies in her life, and certainly her greatest regret. Charles used to be a man she loved deeply, and Evelyn, the girl adopted by her parents because she was the daughter of their friends. Sylvia remembers she fell in love with Charles the very first time she saw him. When they were kids, she saved him. And because of that, their families had a long-standing connection, which led to them being engaged from a very young age. Unfortunately, the person Charles truly loved was Evelyn. Since both of them were in love, Sylvia was left out. But because she was so in love with Charles, she didn't realize it and ended up suffering by doing everything for him. She even agreed to go to prison in Eve's place. In prison, she suffered bullying and was beaten badly by other inmates, which caused a rupture in her kidney. As soon as she was released, Charles did keep his promise to marry her, and she truly believed she would finally be happy. But that's not what happened, because he treated her like a stranger during their marriage. He even had an affair with Eve while Sylvia was pregnant. Desperate with a baby in her belly, she decided to leave. After leaving her old home, she heard the news that her father had died because he was drowning in debt and couldn't take it. Exhausted by everything, she ended up having a miscarriage. But sadly, she only found out that it was all Evelyn's doing at the very last moment of her life. Angry at having his hand slapped, Chuck asks what Sylvia means by that. She replies that it means she's not going to prison, since she has nothing to do with the accident. And because she knows that going to prison wouldn't bring her anything good, only more suffering, she adds that Evie should be the one to go to jail. Maybe if she turns herself in, it could even reduce her sentence. Sylvia believes that even if this is all just an illusion before she dies, she won't let herself be made a fool of again. Charles is shocked by what he just heard and asks Sylvia if she knows what she's saying. After all, Evie has fragile health and going to prison would probably kill her. Fed up with the situation, Sylvia says that's not her problem and turns her back to leave. She wonders how she could have been so stupid to fall in love with a man who treated her so cruelly. Before walking out, she adds that she has no interest in hurting herself for anyone. She tries to leave quickly because if this really is just an illusion, maybe going home will allow her to see her parents again. But before she can leave, Charles runs after her shouting, asking if she has no conscience. After all, Evie is her sister. That makes the protagonist stop just before exiting and question him about conscience. After all, who's trying to send her to prison to take the fall for someone else's crime? She also makes it clear that Evie is not her biological sister. Evie's family name is Lloyd, while hers is Murray. She was simply adopted into Sylvia's family. And secondly, not everyone deserves to be treated with kindness. Evie feels the need to put on another show before her sister leaves, asking why Sylvia is being so cruel, since they lived under the same roof for over a decade. Whether she likes it or not, Evie says she always considered Sylvia her sister. Chuck jumps in to comfort his beloved and tells her not to listen to anything Sylvia is saying. Meanwhile, the villain tries to understand what happened to Sylvia today. Why did she suddenly get so aggressive? Normally, she just obeyed everything Chuck and she said. Watching all this drama, Sylvia simply says she doesn't have such an ungrateful sister. Before she can continue, Charles interrupts and says, "That's enough." He already agreed to marry Sylvia, so what more does she want? She simply responds that she wants to cancel the engagement. If that's what they keep bothering her about, she makes it clear she won't be in the way anymore. So the best thing would be to say goodbye here. And now he can go marry his dear Evie. If that's what they keep bothering her about, she makes it clear she won't be in the way anymore. So the best thing would be to say goodbye here. And now he can go marry his dear Evie. Both Eve and Charles are shocked. But he starts shaking with anger and grabs Sylvia before she can leave, asking what she means by that. But Evie grabs Charles. It turns into a tug of war. Meanwhile, the butler enters, saying that Charles's mother called because his uncle will be arriving soon and she needs him to stay in the main mansion to wait for him. Still holding Sylvia's wrist, Charles says, "Okay, I will go soon." Unfortunately, because of all this chaos, Charles completely forgot that his uncle was coming today. So he asks Sylvia to wait there so they can sort things out when he gets back. But she explains that she's not staying, because illegal detention can lead to a prison sentence of up to 3 years. She shows him the 911 number, making it clear she'll report him if he tries to force her to stay. Evie tries to calm things down, telling Chuck to relax and saying she'll take Sylvia home. He lets go of Sylvia's hand and tells Evie not to worry, that he'll help her no matter what. The villainess is furious that her entire plan is falling apart, since she never imagined Sylvia would ask to cancel the engagement with Chuck. And of course, Chuck doesn't want to end the engagement either. So Evie decides to get revenge. She switches back to her sweet act, saying she'll take Sylvia home, but Sylvia refuses, saying she'll take a taxi. With a wicked laugh, Evie says it was her choice to go home alone. Later, on the road, rain pours down as a car speeds by. The driver says there's a storm, so he won't be able to drive too fast. He mentions that Mr. Lawson will probably be late arriving at Charles's house. The driver notices that even though the man is Charles's uncle, he looks much younger than expected. How can someone so young be in charge of an entire group? The rain gets heavier, and suddenly, the driver spots a woman walking along the road, stepping right in front of the car. He slams the brakes. The man in the car is startled and luckily only hits the woman lightly. The man asks what happened, and the driver, trembling, says he thinks he hit someone. The man says he'll go check. He steps out with an umbrella and asks if the young lady is okay, but she appears breathless and slightly flushed. Out of nowhere, she grabs him and kisses him. He stays there frozen. As if kissing a random man in the middle of the road wasn't enough, she bites his lip too. He pushes her away and asks what she's doing. She just falls to the ground while the driver, unable to see clearly from inside the car, tries to understand if everything is all right. The man, trying to understand what's going on, cleans his lips, but the woman stands up again, hugs the man, and begs him not to leave and to hold her. As he tries to figure out what's wrong with her, she starts trying to undress him. He decides to tie her arms with his necktie, puts her in the car, covers her with his coat, and tells the driver they're heading to the hospital. The driver is confused since they were supposed to go to Charles's house, but the uncle says to go to the hospital and that he'll inform Charles. Meanwhile, Sylvia trembles in the car, still flushed red. God knows what's happening to her. While the man calls Charles to say he had an unexpected situation and will need to cancel dinner, Sylvia begins to whisper that she feels really hot. Charles hears her voice on the phone. He finds the sound familiar but can't quite place it. The uncle quickly cuts in, saying he'll personally apologize to Charles's mother, and hangs up. Sylvia, completely out of it, has her head resting on the uncle's lap. Let's just call him the man, for now. Calling him uncle makes the situation even weirder. She says again that she's feeling very hot. He tells her to sit properly and warns her that if she doesn't behave, he'll throw her out of the car. Still not satisfied, she lunges at his neck. And you can imagine what may have happened next. Let everyone's imagination take it from there. He immediately tells the driver to stop the car, step out of the car, pulls her off the seat, and puts her, completely out of control, Dora, into the trunk. He gets back into the car to continue driving to the hospital. Poor guy, what a situation. The next morning at the hospital, Sylvia wakes up with no idea how she got there or what happened. She hears someone asking if she's awake yet. When she looks over, she sees a man she clearly doesn't recognize, and he asks if she remembers anything from last night. Looking at his neck, she sees some peculiar marks and feels embarrassed for having exposed his wild night like that. The memories come flooding back, her asking him to hold her, kissing him, and everything else from the night before. She panics and feels ashamed. How could she have thrown herself at a complete stranger and left all those marks on his neck? Seeing her reaction, the man realizes that she's just regained her memory and can now answer a few questions. He asks her who she is and why she ended up stopping his car last night. However, Sylvia can't exactly remember what happened before all those heated memories from the night. So she asks, "What do you mean I stopped your car?" He says he's intrigued, because what made her put her life at risk like that last night? Throwing herself in front of a car on a road, knowing there was a big chance the driver wouldn't be able to brake in time and might run her over? Sylvia tries to dig through her memory to recall what really happened. She remembers leaving Charles's house, calling a taxi, and then after she got in, they kidnapped her, took her out to the woods, gave her something to drink. Apparently there were 3 men doing this. Her vision started to blur, and she quickly kicked the guy who was holding her and ran. But before she could fully escape, one of them grabbed her from behind, pulled off her coat, and she fell down a slope. When she remembers all of that, she realizes she really almost died, or something worse. Last night, she says she needs to call the police. Seeing that she wants to call the cops, the man starts to suspect she might be pretending to be a victim, faking that someone set her up, drugged her, and that by pure coincidence, she ended up stopping his car. Poor Sylvia insists that's exactly what happened. And finally, she realizes she really is alive. And even though she went back to the past, many things happening now didn't happen last time. Could it be that she was actually reborn? They're interrupted by a knock at the door, and a blonde guy walks in, asking if she's already awake. Noticing she's up, he informs Mr. Lawson that they need to go, as people are waiting for him in the company's conference room. Before leaving, Mr. Lawson says that drugged women randomly showing up in front of him isn't anything new. She's not the first, but that for the first time, the acting was actually decent. Obviously, Sylvia doesn't take that comment well at all, because she's not some gold digger chasing after him. She just had horrible luck and asks if he's seriously suggesting she was hitting on him. Practically not believing a word she says, he asks if she really wasn't. So she calls him an egonormie. He doesn't quite understand what she means by that, but she keeps trying to insult him, asking if he thinks he's what? Money? And to top it off, she adds that not everyone wants to get their hands on him. The friend who came with him can't hold in his laughter and asks if Mr. Lawson doesn't know what that means. Usually, girls use it to describe a guy who's average in every way but extremely narcissistic. An egonormie. And it's the first time he's seen someone call Mr. Lawson average. He gets irritated, tosses the bag his friend brought onto the bed, and says he doesn't care who sent it, but she better get that stupid idea out of her head, because if they try that again, he won't go easy. His friend also says goodbye, and they slam the door on their way out. Still stunned by the whole situation, Sylvia wonders what kind of psychopath he is. Sure, he's a little handsome, but his cocky demeanor is really disgusting. She says he'd be better off if he stopped being such an egonormie. Looking at the bag he left behind, she wonders if it's some kind of warning to stay out of his sight. But when she opens it, to her surprise, it's a purple dress. And honestly, it's a good thing, because her clothes were all ruined from the rain and mud last night. So maybe he wasn't that bad after all. But that didn't last long. When she gets to the hospital reception, the receptionist tells her that the total for her stay is $11,000. She's shocked. After all, she only stayed one night. How is it that expensive? The nurse explains that it's because she was in the VIP wing. Sylvia insists that she never asked to stay in the VIP area. The nurse replies that it was her companion who made the request. So, if she has someone to complain to, it's him. She instantly regrets thinking he was even a little bit good, because now he's messed with her mentally, and physically too. On the paperwork, she finally sees his name, Tristan Lawson. Finally, we have a name. No more calling him sir or uncle, and she's pissed, wondering who he thinks she is. Does she look like someone who can afford a $10,000 VIP hospital stay? And since the guys who attacked her stole her phone and wallet, she's completely screwed. The nurse, noticing her hesitation, asks what happened. Sylvia explains that she lost her phone and wallet and asks if she could use a phone to call someone to pay the bill. While she waits, the hospital provides her with a phone so she can make a call, and she mentally prepares herself. After all, there's only one person she can count on. The security guard arrives with the phone, and she decides to call the police first to report what happened last night and to denounce the men who drugged her. After calling the police, she returns the phone and thanks the guard. All she can think about is how, in her past life, she deeply disappointed her parents because of Evelyn. After that, she moved away and spent a long time not speaking to them again, even building up some resentment. But the truth was clear. Her parents always loved her, and her mother always forgave her mistakes. Her father, though quiet, was always her rock, but she didn't realize what she had until it was too late. They both ended up passing away, and this time she's determined to save them no matter what. Meanwhile, the guard who lent her the phone is talking to someone, saying he handed it to her just as requested. The person on the other end tells him to send the number she called and to keep an eye on what she does next. After a few moments, the phone rings, and when she answers, it's her mother. Eve, who's having tea with Sylvia's mom, hears the call and realizes those idiots let her escape. Her mother asks why she changed her number and what she's been up to lately, also saying that they really miss her. Her father, listening to the conversation, chimes in to say that he doesn't miss a heartless girl like her, and that she shouldn't come back since she chose to leave. Her mother tells Sylvia not to worry, that her father does miss her deep down. She asks where Sylvia is. Sylvia says she's in the hospital, that she lost her phone and has no money to pay the hospital bill. When her mom hears she was hospitalized, she gets really worried and asks if she's okay. What happened? Sylvia explains she can't talk about it over the phone and asks if her mom could lend her money to pay the bill. Her mom simply says she'll pay everything and not to worry. She's already on her way. After hanging up, Sylvia's father complains about why her mom even answered the call. He says that since Sylvia moved out and can't even pay her own medical bills, she deserves this. But her mother ignores him and leaves anyway, heading straight to the hospital. Obviously, Eve tags along with Sylvia's mom, and when they arrive, her mom is super concerned and asks what happened. Eve, faking innocence, says that Sylvia finally contacted them and that their parents were really worried. But Sylvia doesn't let it slide and replies, "How exactly is Eve worried about her? She doesn't remember a single day when Eve was that kind." Eve puts on her sweet act, and their mother asks why Sylvia is being so cruel. Sylvia tries to explain, saying it's not her fault, and that her mom has no idea what Eve did to her. But before she can continue, Eve cuts in, telling their mom not to blame Sylvia, that everything really is her fault. She says that just yesterday, Sylvia refused to let her take her home. And maybe if she had insisted, Sylvia wouldn't be in the hospital right now. It's all her fault. She tells them both to sit down while she goes to pay the bill herself. She grabs the paper and runs off, pretending to cry. Her mother, falling for the whole act, tells Sylvia that Eve was genuinely worried about her, that the first thing she did was ask to go to the hospital with her. So if Sylvia by any chance thinks Eve did something wrong, well, it'd be good to forgive her, because that's what older sisters are supposed to do. Sylvia decides not to argue with her mother right now, especially since they just reunited, and asks her to sit down for a bit. After all, there's no point in saying anything. Because of Evelyn, her parents still have a huge misunderstanding about her. She's afraid they won't believe her. And she remembers her mom's last words from her past life, telling her not to worry, that what matters is that she lives well. In her past life, when she was imprisoned, Evelyn arranged for someone to beat her up in jail, which caused severe damage to her kidneys, leading to bilateral kidney failure. Because of that, she eventually needed a transplant. But when she found out that her donor was actually her mother, and that she already had a terminal illness, she died shortly after the surgery. And Evelyn was the cause of it all. Meanwhile, Evelyn is fuming on her way to pay the hospital bill. She's pissed that Sylvia managed to escape and found someone who could help her in that remote area. Who the hell was the bastard who ruined Evelyn's plans? That's when she looks at the hospital admission form and sees the name, Tristan Lawson. He saved Sylvia and even arranged for her to stay in the VIP wing. But why does that name sound so familiar? She decides to look into that later. As Sylvia says goodbye to her mother, the security guard starts snapping several pictures and follows Sylvia right after. She heads into the emergency stairwell, and when he enters behind her, he doesn't realize which direction she went. Deciding to go up, he's caught off guard when she's already waiting for him on the stairs, asking why he's following her. Realizing he's been caught, he pretends he wasn't following her and says he was just going upstairs. But Sylvia's not stupid. She grabs his phone and sees that he was actually taking pictures of her. She tells him he's acting really suspicious and that she's going to report him to the police. Panicking, he begs her not to, saying it's just a misunderstanding, that he was paid to do it. When she asks who paid him, he says he doesn't know the guy's name. He just handed him the money and told him to keep an eye on Sylvia and take some photos. Smart as always, Sylvia asks how he contacts this guy to report what she's doing. Does he have the guy's number? The guard admits he does. It's the last number he dialed. Sylvia dials the last contact and wonders why someone would want pictures of her and her mom. Could it be related to one of those bastards from last night? Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a phone vibrates on a table and it's answered by none other than Tristan's friend. He picks up and immediately asks what happened, if there's any update. Sylvia, confused, asks who he is and why he's trying to get pictures of her and find out what she's doing. Realizing everything's already been exposed, he calls her cutie, which totally throws her off, especially when he says she hurt his feelings by not remembering him. After all, they met just that morning. That's when she realizes it was that blonde guy who was with the man who saved her. He confirms it, and she calls him an egonormy underling, like a minion, which kind of wounds his pride. Sylvia then asks if it was the other guy who ordered him to do all that and why. What exactly does he want from her? The blonde guy even asks if she knows who she just called an egonormy. But before he can finish, Tristan approaches and asks if it's her on the phone. His friend jokes, saying, "Yeah, it's the cutie you found on the street last night." Apparently, she's really sharp. She noticed the guy I had following her right away. He adds that Tristan will be shocked when he finds out who she really is. He places a folder with her photo on the table and says, "She's your nephew's fiancée." Meanwhile, Sylvia is hearing everything from the other side of the call and finally realizes that the guy she's been calling an egonormy is actually Charles's uncle. Tristan picks up the folder, flips through it, and then asks his friend to pass the phone. When he takes the call, he introduces himself as Tristan Lawson, Charles's uncle. And since Sylvia is Charles's fiancée, that makes him her uncle too. The protagonist then demands to know why he had a security guard following her. He explains it was just a misunderstanding. He thought she was a corporate spy trying to pull a honey trap on him. But since she's Charles's fiancée, it would be impossible for her to be a spy. Already fed up with everything, Sylvia thanks him for helping her last night and says she'll repay the favor when the time comes. However, she's planning to dissolve the engagement, so he's not going to have the chance to be her uncle. She quickly hands the phone back to the guard and storms off, pissed about being so unlucky. Because that egonormy is actually Charles's uncle, even though he doesn't look much older than her. At that moment, she remembers what happened the night before and gets embarrassed again, trying to convince herself it's fine because she'll never see that man again. She's canceling the engagement anyway. Tristan's friend turns to him and asks if she really hung up, and why she's planning to dissolve the engagement with his nephew. Tristan says he finds it strange too, because from what he heard, Sylvia was madly in love with Charles. So why would she cancel the engagement? His friend adds that he also heard she would do anything for him because of how deeply she loved him. However, the rumors are that Tristan's dear nephew only has eyes for Evelyn Lloyd, the adopted daughter of the Murray family, and that he's too busy giving her all his attention. Tristan asks who Evelyn is. His friend explains that she has a delicate charm that makes everyone feel the need to protect her. She's like a helpless little lamb compared to the other sister. Tristan then asks if she's his type, and the guy says no. He prefers women who are more decisive and seem stronger. Looking again at the documents about Sylvia, Tristan remembers the night of the fire, how he saw her pulling Charles out of the flames before losing consciousness herself after he helped them. That is still something that he is trying to figure out. Back at the hospital, Sylvia is walking down the hallway when she hears Eve talking to someone, saying how embarrassed she feels because her sister is so open-minded, always hanging out with the wrong people. So it's not surprising she got drugged. She was all over some man last night, and Eve asks if people are calling that man Mr. Lawson. As Sylvia opens the door, her sister is speaking to one of the nurses and looks startled to see Sylvia overheard everything. Of course, the protagonist confronts her, asking what kind of gossip she's spreading. She seemed so excited telling the story that Sylvia felt like joining in. Shocked by her sister's presence, Evelyn asks what Sylvia is doing there. Sylvia replies that she's leaving the hospital, so she came to get her stuff. Eve can go ahead and continue whatever she was doing. Her sister tries to play it off, saying she was just there to pack Sylvia's things and ended up chatting with the nurse. Obviously, Sylvia knows exactly what Eve was saying and tells her to stop pretending to be sweet. She knows Evelyn wants Charles for herself, so she should stop with all this because Sylvia is no longer engaged to him. Eve asks what she's even talking about. How could she have any inappropriate feelings for Charles when he's supposed to be her future brother-in-law? Besides, Eve reminds her that Sylvia's been dreaming of marrying Charles since they were kids. At that, Sylvia pauses from packing, feeling a sting of sadness as she remembers how she once thought she had the sweetest sister in the world and was engaged to the man she loved most in life. She did everything for them, but in the end, she realized she was just a puppet being manipulated by the two of them. Answering Eve's question, she says that's all in the past. She doesn't care about Charles anymore. Once the engagement is officially broken off, Eve will also leave the Murray family, and they'll never cross paths again. Shocked, Eve asks what she means by, leave the family. Is this some kind of joke? Why is she even making this kind of request? Eve starts acting all sweet, begging for forgiveness, saying, Sylvia, their mom and dad are the only family she has. Evelyn is wicked. That's why she has nowhere else to go. but the protagonist is already decided. She says that's not her problem. Maybe Eve can move in with Charles since they love each other so much. Eve insists that everything was a misunderstanding. Chuck only sees her as a little sister. They both care a lot about Sylvia. How could she ever betray her sister? But Sylvia has grown numb to this cheap trick. Evelyn's act of playing the innocent and obedient girl whenever she's in trouble. At that moment, she realizes how stupid she was in her past life for not seeing Evelyn's true nature until her very last moments. She wonders when Evelyn started to hate her so much and began plotting everything against her. But Sylvia knows she won't get that answer, so she just ignores her. She says she's done with this nonsense because if their mother and father find out that Evelyn tried to frame her and send her to jail to cover for herself, will they still treat Evelyn like a daughter? With that, she slams the door in Evelyn's face. Evelyn is furious, thinking Sylvia is acting so superior. Just because she has parents doesn't mean she's above Eve. Looking at her phone, she sees that the nurse sent her the photo of the person who brought Sylvia in last night. And with that, she starts plotting how she'll destroy Sylvia's life, piece by piece. Because once Sylvia loses the protection of her parents, she won't be able to walk around with her head held high ever again. Later, at the Murray family estate, her mother announces that they've finally returned and asks if the maid prepared Sylvia's room. She tells Sylvia to go rest a bit in her bedroom, and Sylvia agrees. As she walks through the living room, she sees several photos from when she was a child with her parents, realizing the house still looks exactly as she remembered. It was on one of her childhood birthdays that her parents told her she could have anything she wanted. And that day, Sylvia asked for a little sister to play with her every day. Right after that, she remembers the day her mother went to court to defend her, saying she was such a sweet girl. How could she be involved in a hit and run? There had to be some misunderstanding. She also remembers the day her father asked her not to leave, saying he would take care of her if she needed anything. But she declined, saying that staying at home would only make her feel worse. And she needed a change of environment to get through it all, especially since she was pregnant. Back in the present, remembering all of this, Sylvia realizes she never truly valued her parents' love, and because of that, she didn't consider their feelings. After she broke up with Charles, she left her aging father behind, insisting on moving to another country. She wonders if in that other life, when he was lying alone in a hospital bed, he resented her. A voice interrupts her thoughts, asking if money is the only thing that could bring her back. It's her father, upset that she's acting so startled by someone she barely recognizes anymore after being gone for so long. The protagonist realizes her father is there, sitting, alive. Overwhelmed by all the memories, she runs over and hugs him, saying she's home. Concerned, he asks what happened, if she was bullied or something. She says no. She just missed him a lot. Her father asks why she didn't come home sooner and what exactly happened that led to her being hospitalized. Sylvia tells him she's fine and not to worry. But Eve is already spreading venom, saying she heard from the nurse that Sylvia was taken to the hospital by 2 men. Her father gets furious, and Eve keeps going, saying those men dropped her off at the hospital, and since she lost her phone and wallet, she couldn't pay the hospital bill. Sylvia remembers how, in her past life, she never noticed how Evelyn always twisted things to spark fights between her and her father. Keeping up the performance, Eve then asks what Sylvia was doing with 2 guys anyway. But this time, Sylvia is ready for her sister's little performances. She takes her father's hands and asks what he really thinks. Those 2 men were simply passing by and kindly took her to the hospital. Her father believes her and even flicks her on the forehead, saying that if she hadn't run away from home, she wouldn't have gone through all that trouble. Sylvia smiles and says she knows she was wrong and won't run away again. Her father is happy to hear it and asks if she now understands how happy she can be at home. They sit there, joyful, appreciating how good it is to be together and safe. Evelyn, watching all of this with deep envy, moves to her next provocation. She asks if Sylvia isn't going to tell their father that she broke off the engagement with Charles. Her father, confused and upset, asks, "What do you mean?" He starts shouting at Sylvia, saying she always claimed she'd never marry anyone but Charles. But now that she's finally engaged, she suddenly changes her mind. Marriage is serious. She can't act like a spoiled child. Evelyn tells him to calm down before his blood pressure rises again, and Sylvia also tells him to take it easy. She'll explain everything to him and their mother and share what she's been thinking over the past few days. After all, marriage is something meant to last a lifetime, and she doesn't believe Charles would make a good partner for her. Her father asks, "What are you talking about? You 2 grew up together. He knows you better than anyone in the world." Before Sylvia can reply, he says that's enough. This isn't something to be discussed so casually. It's better to leave this topic for another time and just rest at home for a few days. Sylvia agrees, but she knows ending the engagement won't be easy. They've been engaged since they were kids, so convincing her father without a strong reason will be tough. And she also believes the Lawson family won't accept it so easily either. That's why she needs to find a reason they can't argue against. Evelyn is still irritated that Sylvia offered to break off the engagement, yet people keep trying to talk her out of it. She even seems like a completely different person these past few days. She used to be obsessed with marrying Charles. So what made her suddenly want to give it all up? Could she be planning something? Sylvia decides to strike back, saying that Eve seems so concerned about her, but maybe she has something to tell their parents too. Obviously caught off guard, Eve deflects and asks what Sylvia is trying to say. She claims she has nothing to confess, but Sylvia pushes further, saying she can't just keep something so huge a secret. After all, if she tells the truth, maybe they can figure out a solution together. At that moment, she takes her sister's hand and asks if she hit someone with the car. Their father, overhearing this, is completely shocked and asks what's going on. What do you mean Eve hit someone? She ran someone over? Evelyn freezes, speechless. And of course, she pulls the heart card. She suddenly starts pretending she's having chest pain. Their parents panic and ask if she's okay, if this is another heart attack. Even though it doesn't make much sense, you can't have multiple heart attacks like that. Apparently it does in drama logic. She says it hurts so much, and their mother gets worried, telling their father to run and get her medication from the bedroom. He dashes off to bring the medicine, but Sylvia knows this is just another act. Every time Evelyn has one of these so-called heart attacks, it's when she wants something, just like she did in her past life. Back then, Sylvia was pregnant, and Charles had promised to go with her to the prenatal checkup that day, but he refused, telling her to go alone because Eve was having another heart attack, and if he left, who would take care of her? Sylvia doesn't know for sure if it's all fake, but it definitely feels way too convenient. The butler then announces that Mr. Lawson has just arrived, and Sylvia wonders why Charles is at her house. He enters, saying he heard she was in the hospital and asks if she's all right. The maid explains that as soon as he found out she was hospitalized, he came to visit and even brought vitamins and tonics for her. Annoyed by the situation, but needing to stay polite, Sylvia says that was very thoughtful of him, though she knows he only rushed over because he wants her to go to prison in Eve's place. So she decides to play along and invites Charles to join the conversation, since he should also give his opinion on the matter. When he enters the room, he sees Eve looking unwell, and immediately becomes worried, asking if she's okay and what happened. Pretending to cry, Eve says her heart hurts a lot, and their mother explains that she suddenly had another attack, and their father went to get the medication as fast as possible. Sylvia says it's all her fault. She was too emotional trying to fix things and ended up ignoring Evelyn's feelings. Charles looks at Sylvia with judgment and asks what she did this time to Eve. The protagonist calmly explains that she told their parents Eve hit someone with her car and fled the scene, which makes both parents furious at her for saying such a thing. But she doesn't care and goes on, saying that Eve could even go to prison for that. Then she asks Charles if he has any ideas on how to resolve the situation. After all, Eve is so fragile. Prison wouldn't be the best option for her. Charles is irritated because he knows Sylvia already figured out the whole plan. But with their mother in the room, he can't exactly say he wants Sylvia to take the fall. So instead, he grabs Sylvia's wrist and says they need to talk for a moment, leaving Eve and their mother confused. He pulls her into the garden. Sylvia pulls away and asks if he dragged her out just to ask her to go to prison in Evelyn's place. Why doesn't he just say it in front of her parents? Charles fires back, asking why she's acting so stupid. He says that if he spends enough money, she'd only be in prison for a few months. Why is she making this into such a big deal? They could solve it quietly. After all, Eve has delicate health, and as her older sister, shouldn't Sylvia help? A few months in prison shouldn't be a big deal for her, right? Obviously, knowing everything that happened in her past life, Sylvia starts trembling with rage and simply says, "How dare he say that a few months in prison might mean nothing to me?" She then remembers how, in her previous life, she was assaulted and humiliated during her time in prison. Her mother ended up dying shortly after by donating her kidney in an attempt to save Sylvia's life. That led her father to suffer the grief of losing his wife, and he couldn't bear it either. And yet Charles dares to say that, in his opinion, a few months in prison are no big deal. She then asks if he thinks going to prison is that easy. Why doesn't he go in Eve's place? Why is he trying to ruin her life? Charles snaps back, telling her to stop being ridiculous. How could a few days in prison ruin her life? He'll do everything in his power to make sure she's comfortable while she's locked up. Since Eve once did him a great favor, if Sylvia helps her now, he'll never owe Evelyn anything again. And once she gets out of prison, they can get married and live a happy life together. Sylvia steps back and, laughing, says, "Caring? Married?" She pushes him against a tree and he demands to know if she's going crazy. But she responds by saying she will never marry him in this lifetime. Shocked by what she just said, he's about to respond, but she continues, saying she will never marry him in this life because she hates him. He gets angry and says that's impossible. He grabs her arm and tells her not to take things that far. Why is she doing this? Is she seeing someone else again? She tries to pull away and asks what he's even talking about. What other guy? And what do you mean again? Still holding on to her and saying nothing, Charles is convinced that Sylvia's just pretending not to know. Because what he was told is that she had been flirting with other guys since high school. That's why he asked Eve to keep an eye on her for him. But apparently, all he ever heard was how cruel Sylvia was to Eve. Just like she was on that first day when they argued about the hit and run, and now she's saying she doesn't want to marry him anymore? Before things can escalate further, Sylvia's mother appears. Sylvia pulls away from his grasp. Holding a phone, she says to Charles that his phone was ringing. It's his uncle Tristan. He takes the phone to answer, but before he does, her mom asks if they were arguing. Both of them deny it, saying they were just talking. He then decides to return his uncle's call. His uncle, who's at home, asks if Charles is available for dinner tomorrow night. Charles says he is. Tristan explains that since he missed their dinner last night because of some urgent issues. And before he can finish the sentence, he catches his reflection in the window and sees the mark Sylvia left on his neck from that night. He then asks Charles to bring his fiancée to dinner as well. Charles agrees, but after hanging up, he's confused. His uncle has always been cold toward others and never cared about younger people's engagements or relationships. So why is he suddenly asking Charles to bring Sylvia along this time? What's going on? Charles tells Sylvia's mom that his uncle invited him and his fiancée to dinner tomorrow night. Her mother is thrilled by the idea, but Sylvia isn't happy at all. Why would that narcissist want to have dinner with her and Charles? Is he trying to use his seniority in the family to control her while she's still technically engaged? She considers declining the invitation, but before she can say anything, her mother is already excited, saying Sylvia should take this opportunity to meet Tristan, since they'll be family soon. Charles then says he'll pick Sylvia up tomorrow night for the dinner and asks if Eve is feeling better. Her mother confirms that Eve felt much better after taking her medication, and that Charles doesn't need to worry. He says goodbye and tells Sylvia he'll be back tomorrow, and asks her to wear something nice. Sylvia's mother says goodbye to him as well, while Sylvia is fuming inside. Now she has no choice but to go to that dinner. Excited, her mom grabs Sylvia and tells her they should rush to her room to pick out what she'll wear tomorrow. She wants to dress her daughter in the most beautiful way possible, enough to impress both Charles and his uncle. Back in the living room, her father asks if Eve is feeling better after taking her medication. She thanks him and says she's feeling much better, and he's relieved that she doesn't need to go to the hospital. Jealous, Eve mutters that even if she had a heart attack, she'd probably just take her medicine at home and wouldn't go to the hospital, since the treatment is too expensive. But when Sylvia got drugged, she was admitted to the hospital, in the VIP ward no less. Her father asks what she said, but she brushes it off, saying it's nothing, and asks him to get her another glass of water since she's really thirsty. He heads off, telling her to rest in the meantime. Eve can only think about how fake they all are with her. They seem to care, act like they look after her, but they won't even let her go to the hospital because it's too expensive. Apparently, saving money only matters when it's about her. But when it comes to Sylvia, money doesn't matter at all, because they're not going to leave her any inheritance anyway. And if she can't have it, then Sylvia shouldn't either. She grabs her phone and starts crafting a plan. She texts an anonymous number asking if he managed to erase the security footage. The guy responds that he'll only delete it once he gets the payment. Eve replies that she already transferred the money and also asks him to call the victim's family to see if they'd be interested in settling things privately, because she can pay a good amount if they keep things quiet. In another conversation, she receives a transfer proposal of 20,000 won from a woman buying a pair of red high heels she's selling. The buyer is impressed, saying how lucky she was to find someone selling that discontinued model, especially at such a good price. She also asks Eve to contact her immediately if she has more luxury items, as she's very interested in buying. Eve thanks her and says she'll probably sell a few limited edition dresses soon, along with some necklaces. She knows that Sylvia always receives tons of gifts from Charles, but rarely ever wears them, so they just sit collecting dust in her closet. That's why Sylvia probably won't even notice if some of them go missing. As she continues plotting her evil plan, she thinks to herself that the dresses are nothing more than compensation for the heartbreak Sylvia caused her, because they mean nothing to her. She hears Sylvia talking to their mother and coming down the stairs. As soon as they appear, Eve is stunned. Sylvia is wearing an obviously expensive dress, and she looks even more beautiful in it. Sylvia catches Eve typing on her phone, but she quickly hides it and says her sister looks really pretty in their mother's dress. It even makes her look more mature. But in her mind, Eve is wondering why she dressed up like that. Where is she going looking like this? Sylvia calmly agrees, saying she does look more mature than people who just try to act cute all the time. Pretending to be the victim, Eve says she was only complimenting how beautiful Sylvia looks in the dress. Their mother tries to ease the tension and explains that the dress isn't hers. It was custom made for Sylvia, since after she marries Charles, she'll have to accompany him to many dinners and formal events. She needs to dress accordingly. Eve immediately asks if their mother can buy her a beautiful dress like that too, but their mother refuses, saying that kind of style doesn't really suit Eve, though she promises to take her shopping for a new dress next time. Eve fakes a smile and pretends to be happy, but inside she believes her mother is only pretending to care just because Sylvia is around. She knows they'd never want to spend that kind of money on an adopted daughter. Eve then asks Sylvia where she's going all dressed up like that. Just then, the maid announces that Mr. Lawson has arrived to pick up Sylvia for the family dinner. When Eve hears that, she freezes. Family dinner? The Lawson family? Didn't Sylvia say she wanted to break off the engagement with Charles? Did they make up? She starts to panic at the thought that they might be back together, and she has to stop it no matter what. So she quickly asks Sylvia if she can join them for the dinner, since it's been a while since she's seen Charles's mother. But of course, Sylvia declines, saying that tonight's dinner is being hosted by Charles's uncle, and it would be rude to show up without an invitation. Eve is stunned when she hears it's going to be with his uncle. Sylvia, noticing that Eve seemed to care about that piece of information, asks if she happens to know him. Eve quickly denies it, saying she only heard about him from Charles, but that he was always abroad, so she was just surprised he's back. Sylvia says goodbye, and as she walks out, Eve feels a bit relieved, thinking maybe Sylvia doesn't know anything. But to her despair, Sylvia pauses right before leaving and asks if Eve has seen her red heels anywhere, since she hasn't been able to find them. Nervous, Eve says she doesn't remember, that she hasn't seen Sylvia wear those shoes in a while. Then Sylvia, playing her final card, says that maybe she didn't search thoroughly, and that she'll go through all her things later to make sure nothing is being stolen. That clearly makes Eve visibly anxious. Later that evening, in a luxury hotel, the receptionist directs a well-dressed woman to her destination. She meets Tristan and asks if he's been waiting long. He greets her, calling her Juliana, and says he just arrived. She informs him that Chuck and Sylvia are on their way. Right at that moment, Tristan spots a car pulling up and sees Sylvia and Charles stepping out of it. Once everyone is gathered at the dinner table, Juliana asks Tristan if he returned to personally handle important